Hello everybody, today we are going to be exploring cross contour lines. So what we've been doing lately is contour line drawings, or drawings where we depend on the outline. So today we're going to look at cross contour lines and explore how they're different. We want to put the date and our initials or name on this in addition to the title. First thing I want to do is establish a definition, which we've already got, but on the same page I want you to write that there are cross contour lines that define outer edges going across a surface. So if contour lines define outer edges, cross contour lines go across a full surface. So it's really more than an outline. It tells me about a form instead of just its flat shape. So today you're going to see me draw a bunch of different forms. They'll look flat to start out with, and without shading, I'm going to give you the illusion that they do have some volume to them. Looks kind of complicated, but it's actually not that hard once you get into it. So, let's start by drawing our first form, which is going to be a cylinder. Now, when we draw a cylinder, it's really easy. It's like drawing a bottle cap or drawing like a bottle, just a little bit less complicated. So you can start with the base and then draw another ellipse up at the top to establish the top, and then two lines connecting them, and that's it. Kind of looks like a marshmallow. We're going to decide which lines we want to make a little bit darker though. So on here I'm going to darken my lines. I'm going to say that I can see the top of this, and if I see the top of an object, then that's the one that I want to darken. Then I'm going to get the sides. And just the bottom part of that base for the ellipse. So really easy. You can clean it up if you want to. There we go. Cylinder. Next we want to do the cross contour lines on top of here. So we're going to deal with that top portion first, so this ellipse at the top. Now, depending on the object, if you can see inside of here, then it's going to look different. If you can actually see a flat surface on the top, then what we do is we take a line and show that there's a flat surface on the top. Pretend like if you were to run your finger over it, like you would feel that it's flat on the top. That's why we do that. It's kind of like we're establishing a symmetry point here. So we also want to go and make a line going down the center to establish symmetry. You can still do that like little X trick if you want to help you figure out what the actual center is. Man, I'm so good at this. But whatever makes this easier for you. We're still only going to deal with the very top of it. So I have my horizontal line, my vertical line. I'm going to make some diagonal lines going through. Again, that's me imagining that my finger's going across the surface. It's flat all over, both ends, all ends. And then just to show me that it's going flat all the way around, I'm going to draw a smaller version of that same ellipse towards the inside. You can keep doing that. It's almost like you're making a dartboard, or I don't know, anything else that uses these kind of targets. Kind of like a really simple spider web almost. Alright, so there we go. So now we've got the top of this ellipse. Next we want to deal with the actual sides. Now a cylinder is really easy, so it just goes straight down the whole time, unlike a bottle that has a bunch of interesting kind of curves to it. It just goes straight down. You can see on the sides, you can see in the middle, this just goes straight down. So we're just going to make some lines that goes straight down. When you're doing cross contour lines, it doesn't really matter how many lines you put in. It's kind of up to you. If you put too many, then it starts to look kind of complicated. If you put too few, then you might not give me the full idea of what this surface is like. So just a couple of lines, roughly evenly spaced. It's not the biggest deal if they're not, it just looks nicer if they're even. Now the complicated part of this is going to be doing the ones across. So we don't want to make ones that go straight across like this, because that would mean that if I put my finger there, it like would be flat. But a cylinder is round, just like bottles are cylinders. They go in a round kind of formation. This is too. So imagine if I cut this at any point, you would see that same ellipse that we have at the top, that same ellipse that we have at the bottom, right? So I'm going to draw a bunch of those ellipses in there to remind me of what that form is going to be like. They can go over each other, it doesn't matter, but they're very light. Now I can see the top of this curve right there. I can see the bottom. And notice that they're all kind of like smiling at you, right? And that's because this object is lower than me. So because I have this and this, the lines here, I'm going to get like the bottom of them. So the bottom of my ellipses are the ones that matter for this form. And that really depends on the angle that you're looking at. So you can try to get them as straight as you can. Doesn't look the best, but gets the point across. Alright, so that's how you do a cross contour cylinder. Next, we're going to do a sphere. I'm actually going to do two. There's two ways that I want to show you how to do this. So again, if you're really bad at drawing circles, then you can have something to help you. You can just sketch it out. You can make it look as good as possible by tracing something. So I'm going to do one kind of like bigger one and then like another smaller one here. If you want me to, I can just go over that a couple times, but I have the fun app that kind of lets me do what I want. Alright, so I have two circles now and I'm going to make them look like they're spheres by doing the cross contours on them. Just like we did with our cylinder, we want to establish some symmetry going across and going up and down. So going across this surface, going vertically across this surface. Try to get that as even as you can. So find the middle as best as possible. So those center lines are really going to tell me a lot. So a sphere is like very curved, right? If you think of like a basketball, you'll see the lines that are kind of curving on it. Or if you think of like a beach ball, it has all those lines indicating those curves. So on the left and right side of the center, I'm going to curve my lines. Now the closer they are to the edge, the more curved they are. And as they start to go towards the center, they'll start to straighten out. So you'll see that. So since I'm close to the center now, to the left here, I'm just going to make a curve that like barely curves out. So barely curves that way. And then as it goes towards my edge, it's going to curve more and more. So there you go. It's a line that's slowly curving. It's like we're transitioning from straight to curved. I'm going to do the same on the other side. And I'll try to keep them symmetrical. So you can almost think of these like ovals that are just getting wider and wider. All right. So there you go. Again, it just follows the curves. So as I get further out, it starts to curve more. As I get towards the center, it'll start to straighten out. If you want to, you can turn your paper over and the same thing will go for here. So whatever is higher or lower will do the same thing. I just like to draw a bunch of oval shapes or ellipse shapes, and that actually makes it easier for me. So there's one ellipse and it starts to get wider towards the sides. So getting wider and finally getting really wide like that. Mix those up. And there you go. So it'll be really straight in the center because we're looking at it as straight as it can get. And then we just make all of those lines going back and forth, up and down. So to me, that's the easiest way to do it. If you watch me, I'll do it like a third one. So it's just an oval that gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And then I'll turn it sideways. I'll do the same thing. 1, 2, 3. Kind of starts to look like an onion, and then you turn it the other way and it gets more complicated. If you want really complicated, I'll show you what to do here. So just like with our cylinder, again, if you imagine cutting it at any point, we're going to do the same thing to this circle. So if you like cut our circle, it's just going to be a bunch of ellipse shapes. So really lightly, I'm going to draw in a bunch of those. Get smaller and smaller towards the bottom. So anything that's above the center line, we're going to get the top of those ovals that I just drew. Anything that's below, we're going to get the bottom of those ellipses I drew. Now I'll do the same thing going sideways. So just keep going, a bunch of ellipses. Doesn't this look complicated? It's really not though. So on this side, we're going to get everything going towards the left. On this side, we're going to get everything going towards the right. So that helps me kind of break it down in my mind. They really look the same to me. If you get rid of all the sketch lines, they look basically the same. Whichever way makes the most sense to you is what I want you to use. So really figuring out the center lines first and then going from there. Alright, and that's the first part of cross contour lines, the cylinder and the sphere. We're going to start to make it more complicated right after this. So if you have room on the same page, then we're going to continue on with our next cross contour object, which is a bottle. So for my bottle, first thing I want to do is draw one. And we'll just go over that same process that we've been doing. So I'm going to make this up and start with an ellipse for the base. We want this to be like a medium-sized bottle, not taking up the whole page, but you know, enough that we have room to work with. And I'm going to say this bottle is almost twice as tall, I guess. Maybe a little taller than that. So about 1, 2, let's go with like 2.5. Can do my sides. Figure out my line of symmetry. Go right down there. All of these things I'm going to do super lightly because I'm going to end up making this even more complicated. So we'll do this. I'll draw in a very simple cap, just like our cylinder. An ellipse shape that just goes down. And then rounds off right there. And then for this bottle, I'm going to have it go down straight, kind of angle, almost in the middle. And then I will make those curves look a little bit nicer. So now I really want to clean this up. So I just want a clean bottle at the end of this. I can keep my symmetry line, but that's basically all that I need. So it all starts with having a good clean shape. So all my lines look nice and smooth now. Corners are rounded off a little bit. And I could really just keep that symmetry line going down the middle. Okay, so when it comes to our bottle, first thing we want to do again is the top, and the top is really easy this time because it's just a cylinder. So it's just like before where I have the top. Let's say I can see that the top of it is flat, so I'll treat it like I did before. If you drew really small, then just, make sure your pencil is sharp when you do this part so that you can actually end up seeing all those lines. Doesn't help if your pencil is very dull. This part of our bottle just goes straight down, so we'll have this go straight down. And then you can see that the rings go like this, so they're kind of like smiling at you. So just a bunch of ellipse shapes in here if you want. Like that. So doing the cap is pretty easy. If you have a cap that has a bunch of ridges in it instead, so let's say has all these, then the surface gets treated differently and you have to look at all of those ridges too. So we started with a really simple one for now. Also, if you see inside a bottle, right? So let's say like I can look inside of here, then I wouldn't necessarily see the top of it being flat, but I would see the other side of the bottle kind of showing up. Very complicated, right? So fun. So it really depends on what you're seeing in front of you. We're just going to go with this one because it's simpler for today. All right. So now that we've dealt with the cap, because we already did a cylinder earlier, you see why I do things in this order? We're going to deal with the body of the bottle. So the cap just went straight down, but here you can see there's like some slight angling going on before it straightens out, curves down again at the edges. So we're going to do the same thing. Anything that's to the right of the center line, we're going to try and copy that edge. So kind of really close to here, I want to be pretty curved because I'm copying essentially this outside line. But then towards the center, I want to straighten it out, make those curves a little bit less subtle. So what I see some people do is they'll go like this and then like this and make a lot of really pointy lines. You really want to be smooth if your surface is smooth. So I'm going on the left now, and again I'm straightening it out a little bit towards the center. You can see that up at the top where the bottle gets skinnier, the lines have to get closer together. So indicate that. So all these spaces are kind of converging. Next part, really easy. Just like what we did with the cylinder, it's a bunch of ellipses stacked up against each other. So I'm just going to draw a bunch of those ellipses. Imagine cutting my bottle. And that's going to go all the way up at the top. So you see that they get smaller towards the top. And then again, we have this kind of curve sandwiching them because it's lower than us. Anything lower than you is going to smile. So I'm going to get the bottom of all those ellipses that I just drew in there. Feel free to space them out as you want to. Again, the more that there are, the more complicated it'll kind of look. But you want enough that it doesn't look super simple and I can't get an idea of what the form is. All right. Bottle is done. Last thing that we need is the pear. And so we're going to use a pear as our fruit, just because it's pretty simple to me. So I'm going to draw my axis line. I'm going to have it tilting a little bit towards the left this time. Figure out my widest point. Figure out my top. And a bottom. I'm going to make that really round. If there's any defining shapes, I can add those in. So bottom of a pear is pretty circle heavy. And then I can connect all those lines together. Don't forget that I really want to add in a stem. So going up at the top, I'm gonna make a little dip like that. And then I'm going to add in a stem that has some thickness to this. So I'm not drawing this super tiny on my page because I want to be able to draw that as more than just a little bit of a hair. I can finalize some of my lines. And clean up. Now I can keep the axis point if I want to. I can clean up this whole thing if I want, but the axis line, the top, the middle, the bottom, all of those can stay. Just that defining shape, I don't really need the circle in there. And you can essentially keep all the lines if you want to. I'll show you what to do even if you erase them. So I'll get rid of everything and just have this very clean looking pear to start out with. But really, if I've been dealing with a symmetry line this whole time for my pear, the axis line is going to be really important for me. So just redraw in that axis line. I actually think the very top part that we drew is going to be important as well, so I'll keep that. Redraw the widest point, redraw the bottom. Those are all going to help me. So just like we did with the bottle, we dealt with the cap first. I'm going to deal with the top of this pear, because it's similar to our cap where everything is going in towards the center, right? Everything is trying to hit that center point. But that's actually for us where the stem comes out. If there's just a little bit of a dip happening here, in this case it looks more like that. And so all these lines are trying to go in towards our stem. So because the pear isn't flat on top but it's curved, we have all these kind of curved lines heading in towards the stem. So we're going to draw that, and we'll use that like first ellipse that we drew for the top to help us. So all these lines are going to curve inwards, trying to come out of that stem area. So all these kind of curve inwards. And that's going to act as my top. So the lines will come out from up there as well. Kind of looks like a pumpkin at the top there, or like a spider at the top. Very scary. But this leads us back into our shape. So just like with the sphere, we deal with the center line first. Really close to it is going to be like pretty straight, just slightly curved. And then as we go outwards, you're going to see more. So everything is going to come out of the stem. So if you add another line, it's also going to come out from that stemmed area. And slowly it's going to get more and more curvy like the edges. Once you have that, it's pretty easy to just keep going. So we're just going to keep drawing those ellipse shapes in there. Sometimes the angle will start to change, which is why we draw that kind of widest point so that we know when to shift the angles that we're drawing. All right, I see the bottom curve of all those ellipses. And this pair is round, so we're going in those round shapes. Okay. So we have that. If you want to get like really in there, like we did with the bottle cap, we drew like another line of a circle in the middle. You can, draw that as well. We don't want to ignore our stem though. So our stem, if you drew it really small, then, this will be very difficult for you, but I'm going to get the sense of curvature. Get a line going kind of vertically following that angle, and even the top I want to give a little bit of treatment to. So if you can see the top of the stem, can treat it like the top of a bottle cap as well. And that's it. Those are all of your shapes for cross contour lines. Very fun stuff.